You know, you have been told your entire life that practice makes perfect,
Right?
right?
Absolutely. That's like the golden rule.
Yeah, whether you're learning a sport or a language or a musical instrument, the ultimate goal is always the same. It's muscle memory.
Right. You just drill the movements until you don't even have to think about them anymore.
Exactly. But what if knowing your job entirely by muscle memory is actually the exact thing that's ruining your performance?
Which sounds completely backwards. I know.
It really does. Like, what if the comfort of knowing exactly what you are doing is slowly making you terrible at doing it with other people?
Yeah, it's a wild concept.
So today, for this deep dive, we are looking at a piece of source material that completely flips this entire idea of practice upside down. It's a special technical bulletin published by the IIRP, that's the International Institute of Rhythmic Precision.
Which I have to say is a fascinating organization just on its own.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the IRP is essentially this high-level think tank where audio engineers cross over with neuroscientists.
Oh.
Right. They actually study the literal brain waves and the biomechanics of musical performance.
That is so intense. And the document we're diving into today comes from their Rhythm and Signal Integration Quarterly.
Such a mouthful.
It really is, yeah. But it's entirely focused on something they call Phase 4 calibration. And just to set the table for you, the bulletin notes that, like, phases 1 through 3 involve the standard stuff you would expect a band to do.
Yeah, like tuning their instruments, treating the room for acoustic reflections, getting their basic tempo locked in, normal stuff.
Right, exactly. But phase 4 is where they cross the line into, like, actual neurological synchronization.
Yeah, and reading this, I mean, it reads less like a music magazine and way more like a high-stakes medical journal.
Oh,
The
totally.
language is incredibly clinical.
Intense is really the only word for it. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the IRP's strict, frankly brutal, single-point protocol.
Brutal's right.
We're going to figure out exactly why veteran, highly experienced teams suddenly they lose their edge. And the extreme, almost punishing lengths required to reclaim what the Institute calls studio-type precision.
Yeah, studio tight.
You know, thinking about this phenomenon, I keep coming back to this one image. It's like an old married couple walking down the street together.
Okay, I like this.
Have you ever noticed how a couple that has been together for 30 years knows each other's walking pace so perfectly that they actually stop paying attention to each other?
Oh yeah, they just go into autopilot.
Right. They stare straight ahead, and suddenly they find themselves constantly stepping on each other's heels because that active awareness is just completely gone.
The visual perfectly translates to the sonic phenomenon these researchers are documenting.
Right.
Like the musicians aren't trying to step on each other's toes, obviously.
Right? Of course not.
But the active awareness is basically flatlined. And the IIRP actually has a formal clinical diagnosis for this exact decay in veteran groups.
Oh, right. What do they call it?
They call it associative phase drift.
Associative phase drift. Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the really bizarre extreme cure they recommend later in the bulletin, we first have to understand the invisible disease infecting these live performances.
Yeah, exactly.
When the Institute says these bands are drifting, what exactly is moving?
Well, what's shifting is the temporal alignment between the players on a microscopic level.
Microscopic.
Right. According to the data in the bulletin, when musicians play the same songs together for years and years, their brains literally undergo a metabolic shift.
Wait, a metabolic shift.
Yeah, they stop actively listening to each other to synchronize their timing. Instead, the brain just hands the entire workload over to the basal ganglia.
And that's the part of the brain that governs.
Motor control and routine behaviors.
Yeah, okay, got it.
So the brain essentially says, look, I've played this bass line 10,000 times. I don't need to burn cognitive calories listening to the drummer to know when to pluck the string.
Right.
My hand just knows the physical sequence.
Okay, I have to push back on this for a second,
Sure.
because that sounds completely logical. And frankly, it sounds like the ultimate goal of rehearsing.
Right, you think so.
Like you practice shooting free throws or typing on a keyboard or playing a scale specifically so you don't have to think about it. It frees up your brain to focus on the big picture.
Exactly.
So why does knowing a song so well that it lives in your hands actually ruin the groove?
I know, it feels incredibly counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But the bulletin breaks down the mechanics of this paradox by differentiating between a passive physical routine and active sonic synchronization.
Okay.
The brain uses muscle memory to take cognitive shortcuts,
All right.
to conserve energy.
Yeah, which makes sense.
But playing perfectly in time with other human beings requires constant millisecond-level adjustments. Like human tempos naturally breathe.
Right. They speed up slightly during a big chorus.
Exactly, and they lay back slightly in a verse.
Yeah.
But when a musician switches to that passive physical routine, they lose the ability to make those microscopic adjustments.
Oh, wow.
They're playing the song from memory, not playing the song with the room.
So they're basically in their own little bubble.
Precisely.
And the symptom of that disconnect is what audio engineers call a mushy pocket, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like you're at the concert, the band is playing their biggest hit, they're hitting all the right notes, nobody is out of tune, but the sound hitting your ears just feels blurry.
Right. It lacks that sharp, punchy impact that makes you want to nod your head.
Yeah. So how do they measure that blurriness?
Well, the researchers point to a very specific metric. They observe the transients of the bass and the guitar.
Transients.
Right. A transient is the initial high-energy attack of a sound. It's the exact microsecond a guitar pick strikes a string or a beater hits a drum head before the actual musical note blooms and sustains.
Okay, the attack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the bulletin shows that in veteran bands suffering from this associative phase drift, the transients are technically happening within the same beat, but they are temporally unaligned.
So, okay, imagine dropping a handful of marbles onto a hard wooden table all at once.
Okay, I like this.
Even if they all hit the table within a split second of each other, the sound is just this messy clatter.
Yeah, it's just noise.
But if you drop one single marble, or if somehow all those marbles hit the table at the exact same atomic millisecond, you get a sharp, defined, powerful crack.
Yes. And when the transients of the band are unaligned, you get the clatter. The notes are right, the sequence is right, but the attacks are misfiring by tiny fractions of a second.
And that clatter is associative phase drift in action.
Exactly. The brain's reliance on muscle memory has destroyed the band's temporal lock.
Which really begs the question, how do you fix it? How do you force the brain out of the basal ganglia and back into the prefrontal cortex?
Right. How do you force a veteran musician to actually listen again?
Yeah. And the IIRP's answer to this is, frankly, a drill designed to violently block those neurological shortcuts.
It's intense.
They do this by stripping away what they call masking layers, so the complex fingerings, the fast chord changes, the intricate melodies that distract the ear.
Right.
And they call this the Single-Point Calibration Method.
It is a ruthless methodology. The entire goal is to overwhelm the motor cortex so that it can no longer multitask.
Overwhelm it.
Yeah, forcing 100% of the musician's cognitive bandwidth onto a single point in time.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of how they actually enforce this, starting with the string section.
Oh, this is wild.
The bulletin outlines the anchor hand constraint for guitar and bass players. And honestly, when I first read this requirement, I actually laughed out loud because the visual is just so absurd.
It really is.
The rule dictates that the player's fretting hand, so their left hand, if they're playing a standard right-handed guitar, must be shoved entirely inside their trouser pocket for the duration of the drill.
Just picture the reality of that inside a rehearsal space.
Right.
You have professional musicians who have toured the world, standing in a room, forced to play their instruments with one hand literally stuck in their pockets.
And the execution of the drill dictates that they can only strike open unfretted strings, or they can hold down one single root anchor note for the entire duration of the song.
Yeah.
There are no chord changes. There is no sliding up and down the neck. They are just rhythmically striking one string over and over again.
And there's a clinical reason for this. By completely removing the left hand from the equation, you eliminate the complex physical dance that normally occupies the musician's brain.
Uh-huh.
Without the distraction of chord shapes and fretboard positioning, the brain cannot hide behind the physical routine.
Right. It strips it bare.
Exactly. It's forced to dedicate all its processing power to the exact millisecond the right hand strikes the string with the pick.
Because there is absolutely nothing else to hide behind. It really reminds me of, the first time you try to type a really important email, but you force yourself to only use your two index fingers.
Oh yeah, the hunt and peck.
Right. Suddenly, without the fluid muscle memory of all 10 fingers flying across the keys, you realize how much your brain was relying on that speed to mask your sloppy rhythm and your terrible spelling.
That's a great analogy.
When you are reduced to a single point of contact, every single error feels magnified by 1,000.
And the bulletin confirms that exact magnification effect. It states that if that single isolated pick attack isn't perfectly locked with the kick drum, The phase drift is immediately and painfully exposed to everyone in the room.
Oh man, nowhere to hide.
Exactly. There is no complex, swirling melody or distorted chord progression to distract the ear. You are either hitting that string perfectly in time with the drum, or you are demonstrably, undeniably out of time.
So you have successfully immobilized the guitars. They're standing there playing a single naked pulse.
Right.
But if you do that while the drummer is still playing a complex, flashy beat with multiple cymbals and tom fills, the acoustic masking is still happening.
Oh, absolutely.
The guitars are exposed, but the drummer is still hiding behind a wall of noise. So how does the Institute force the drummer out of hiding?
Well, you can't calibrate a delicate temporal instrument while someone is banging a gong next to it, right?
Right, exactly.
So the drums have to be equally deconstructed to maintain the integrity of the experiment.
And that's where the bulletin introduces the mono-stick percussion protocol.
Yes.
The drummer is legally restricted, well, by the rules of the drill, to using only one stick and their right foot on the kick drum.
One stick.
One stick. All cymbals, all toms, and all secondary snare hits are strictly prohibited. They're playing the core beat with one hand and one foot.
And the clinical logic driving this specific constraint is the elimination of flams.
Okay, what's a flam?
A flam is a percussive term for when a drummer accidentally hits a drum with two sticks just a microsecond apart.
Oh, okay.
Instead of a sharp singular crack, it creates a slightly smeared, thickened sound. So by physically limiting the drummer to one stick, the protocol forces them to provide a singular, undeniable pulse.
That is wild. And the text mentions a clinical indicator here that is incredibly revealing, I think.
Yeah.
It notes that if the beat feels thin or weak to the band once all those extra drums and cymbals are removed, it is definitive proof that the drummer has been using sheer volume and density to hide their terrible timing.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow. Because many musicians use density, playing lots of notes, crashing lots of cymbals, creating a wall of sound to cover up a fundamental lack of precision.
Wow.
Take away the noise, take away the density, and you expose the naked truth of their rhythmic capability.
You know, looking at this purely clinical approach to breaking down the beat, I really have to ask a broader question about the art of music itself.
Okay.
Doesn't stripping away the ghost notes, the cymbals, the complex chords, and the fills take all the soul and emotion out of the performance?
I mean, it seems like it would.
Right. Music is supposed to be expressive. It's supposed to breathe and sway. Is the IIRP just trying to turn human musicians into literal, rigid drum machines?
Well, the underlying philosophy of the IRP text argues that you cannot have true feel or groove without fundamental precision as the baseline.
Okay.
If your transients are misaligned because of associative phase drift, you aren't creating a soulful pocket.
Yeah.
You're just playing sloppily. Think of it like trying to synchronize a complex set of interlocking gears.
Right.
If the individual teeth on those gears have worn down and become rounded off, the machine won't spin smoothly no matter how much oil you pour on it.
I see.
You have to rebuild the sharp edges of the teeth first. So the protocol isn't trying to make them machines forever.
Right, it's a reset.
Exactly. It's forcing them to rebuild the sharp edges of their timing so that when they add the complex emotion back in, it actually connects with the audience.
So you have to earn the right to bend the rules by proving you can actually follow them first.
Beautifully put.
Okay, so we have the string section locked down, and the drummer is reduced to a single stick. But what about the singer?
The singer.
They can't just stand around checking their phone while the band undergoes this temporal surgery. The singer has to become the focal point of the lock.
And this is where the protocol becomes psychologically demanding on a completely different level.
Yeah. So the rule is called the human metronome master clock. The singer is required to abandon all lyrics and all vocal melodies. None.
None at all.
Instead, they have to stand at the microphone and make a sharp, percussive click or trisk sound on every single quarter note. Just trisk, trisks.
Right. And the bulletin points out a physiological fact that explains why they use the vocalist instead of simply turning on an electronic metronome.
Which would be easier, right?
Much easier.
Right.
But the human voice has zero latency. When a singer thinks about making a sound, it happens instantaneously.
Wow, okay.
There is no physical mechanism between the brain and an external instrument to cause a mechanical delay.
Right, there's no heavy wooden drumstick to swing through the air, no metal string to press down and pluck. The thought and the sound are simultaneous.
Exactly. So this vocal click becomes what the IIRP categorizes as the band's digital heartbeat.
Digital heartbeat.
It acts as the ultimate master reference point. The guitar player, with their hand in their pocket, the bass player, and the drummer, with their single stick, must all sync their isolated transients to that specific vocal click with, and I'm quoting the text here, surgical precision.
Think about how this completely flips the traditional dynamics of a team or, a rock band upside down.
Okay, boy.
Usually, the lead singer is the star. They carry the ego, they deliver the lyrics, they are the face of the operation floating over the top of the music, while the rhythm section does all the heavy mechanical lifting in the background.
Right, the front person.
Exactly. But this drill forcefully subverts that hierarchy. The lead singer is stripped of their melody, stripped of their words, and stripped of their ego.
Yeah.
They are reduced to nothing more than a fundamental, egoless metronome. They have to serve the collective pulse of the team.
It's fascinating.
Imagine going into your next corporate strategy meeting, and the boss isn't allowed to use any words or pitch any ideas.
Oh, man.
They just have to sit at the head of the table and clap a steady tempo for everyone else to speak to. It's an incredible leveling of the playing field.
It really forces every single member of the group into a state of extreme, hyper-focused, mutual reliance.
But looking at the sheer mechanics of this, like reading through the drill requirements, I honestly don't see how a band physically endures this without throwing a chair at each other.
Yeah, the tension would be insane.
Knowing the rules of the single-point protocol is one thing, but surviving the implementation is another.
Well, the implementation requirements documented in the bulletin are grueling. Bands are required to run their full standard set list using this stripped-down method for a minimum of 45 continuous minutes per session.
45 minutes of playing your biggest hits with one hand in your pocket, one drumstick, and the singer going twisk. The tension in that room would be suffocating. You're playing songs you have performed thousands of times, and suddenly you're struggling just to hit one single note at the exact same millisecond as your bandmates.
And the scientific data highlighted in the source tracks the psychological response to this crucible. The deep annoyance, the anger, the sheer frustration the musicians experience during that 45 minutes isn't just an emotional reaction to a difficult task.
What is it then?
It is a literal neurological response. That intense frustration is the physical sensation of their rhythmic brains being rewired in real time.
Oh, wow.
The drill is aggressively breaking down years of lazy, encrusted muscle memory and forcing the neural pathways to burn new routes that prioritize active listening and synchronization.
It is the brain experiencing the growing pains of active engagement.
Exactly.
But reading through this intensely clinical, grueling documentation, there is a twist right at the end of the research.
Oh, yeah. This is the best part.
It is arguably the most fascinating, slightly hilarious loophole I have ever seen in a technical paper.
The digital bypass.
The digital bypass. The IIRP lays out this brutal 45-minute physical and psychological torture chamber designed to break down ego and rebuild neural pathways.
Right.
But then, in the concluding section, they casually reveal that there is exactly one alternative to this drill. You can bypass the entire psychological crucible by immediately transitioning the band into a high-fidelity digital signal environment.
Yeah.
And they specifically cite the Behringer X-Air platform as an example of the hardware required.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And the mechanics of how this digital bypass actually functions are incredible. The text explains that a digital mixer of that processing caliber doesn't just make the band louder.
Right.
It provides real-time algorithmic phase correction combined with individualized ear-level monitoring.
But how does a piece of hardware mathematically compensate for human beings relying too much on muscle memory?
Well, by manipulating the reality of what each musician hears in real time.
Wait, what?
Yeah, if the system detects that the bass player is consistently rushing the beat by 5 milliseconds due to associative phase drift, the digital mixer introduces a micromillisecond delay into that specific player's in-ear monitors.
So it lies to them.
It artificially slows down the audio feed the rushing player is hearing, forcing their brain to subconsciously wait for the slower players to catch up.
Oh my gosh.
The technology creates an artificial, digitally enforced temporal lock by manipulating latency.
It is tricking their brains into staying in the pocket.
Yes.
The IIRP is basically saying you have two choices if your team is drifting out of sync. You can subject yourselves to a grueling, ego-destroying musical boot camp to rebuild your neural pathways, or
you can literally just buy your way out of the problem.
exactly, by spending thousands of dollars on high-tech digital gear that lies to your ears to keep you on beat.
But the technology operates as a highly sophisticated crutch. The text is explicit about this. The digital mixer is highly effective, but it is entirely artificial.
Right, it's a Band-Aid.
If you take the in-ear monitors out, the band will immediately fall back into the clatter of unaligned transients. If you want to permanently fix the human element, if you want the brains to actually synchronize, you have to do the one-handed, one-stick drill. There is no biological shortcut.
Wow. As we wrap up the core lessons from this intense dive into Phase 4 calibration, I keep going back to the final quote in the text from Dr. Alistair Vane, the head of neuromuscular studies at the Institute.
It's a great quote.
He says, "Precision is not an accident, it is a clinical requirement."
And the implications of Dr. Vane's research extend far beyond the walls of a recording studio. He is demonstrating that being truly in sync with a team, any team, requires relentless, active effort.
Yeah. Because whether you are playing in a touring rock band or running a corporate marketing team or collaborating on a complex project with a partner, those masking layers of complexity can hide fundamental flaws in how you work together.
Right, absolutely.
You get comfortable, you rely on the daily routine, you start hiding behind corporate jargon or flashy PowerPoint presentations or just sheer busy work.
Just like a drummer hiding poor timing behind a wall of loud cymbals.
Exactly. And sometimes to fix the drift, you have to force yourself to strip all of that noise away. You have to remove the masking layers, isolate the absolute core pulse of what you were trying to achieve, and ask, are we actually hitting this beat together, or are we just making a lot of noise in the same room?
Yeah, because we've seen the clinical evidence of how our brains naturally seek out lazy shortcuts, defaulting to the comfort of muscle memory to conserve energy, which inevitably leads to that blurry associative phase drift.
We all do it.
So, as you go about your day, consider this. Where else in your life, in your career trajectory, your daily habits, or even your closest relationships, are you relying entirely on muscle memory?
Right.
And as a result of that comfort, are you slowly drifting out of sync with the people around you without even realizing it?